China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world. I mean, honestly, I joke about it. He can't walk across the street. In that way, he's like Biden. But for building a plant, he can do the greatest plants in the world, right? That's all he cares about. I said, I'd like to see one of your plants recently. I said, I'd like to see, where can we go? Well, we have to travel to Mexico. I said, why Mexico? He said, because that's where the big plants are building. China's building really big plants in Mexico, and Mexico's building. What about here? Well, we're building much smaller plants here. Can you believe it?
I honestly cannot believe that we have got to waste our time talking about the 1 millionth leftist propagandist anti-Trump hoax. But sadly, there are people dumb enough to believe literally every single nonsense thing that they hear about Donald Trump and his authoritarian, and apparently now, if you believe the internet, murderous intentions. I mean, it's insane. Just think about what confirmation bias will allow a person to believe. Now, these obviously, they're the same people who have invested years and years of their life into believing the January 6th nonsense. I mean, they honestly believe that 5 police officers were lost that day. Thank God that that's not the case, but people believe this, man. Millions and millions of people believe this. So when they see the usual 3-second distillation of a 20-minute Trump speech, they don't even ask, why wasn't I showed the entire speech? Why was I only showed in 3 seconds? Because those 3 seconds are enough to confirm and affirm their worst possible beliefs. I mean, it is freaking crazy, man. And of course, guys, I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that there's going to be a bloodbath if he's not elected. And here's a good social experiment. If you want to know which of your friends are complete morons and really, really, really need our help to save their brains, just ask them. Ask them what the term bloodbath means to them. And the people that go into TDS seizures, those are the people that need our help. We don't need to make fun of them. We don't need to chastise them. We don't need to call them names. We just need to help them save their brains, man, because we're going to see more and more and more of this the closer we get to November. The left is getting desperate. Donald Trump is getting stronger and stronger every day, and they are losing their freaking minds. Impeachment didn't work. Weaponization of the justice system, that didn't work. Who knows how many Russia scams? None of those worked. The latest one, they tried to convince you that he's just as senile as Biden. He can't remember his own wife's name. That was a flop. We're going to see more of these things, man. But the current one, Trump's bloodbath, and if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, Donald Trump was talking about a bloodbath for the American economy, and more specifically, the American auto industry. Because Joe Biden, of course, the greatest jobs president in the history of the entire world, and the entirety of the American left, they're so hooked on the electric car scam fantasy that they're set to allow China to build cheap, America job-killing electric cars just across the border in Mexico. And Trump's position is that if that is allowed, it will be an absolute bloodbath for American industry. And he's not wrong. He's 100% completely correct. But if you're a leftist who's trapped in some internet bubble, this is what Donald Trump being completely correct actually feels like.
Oh my God. I'm paraphrasing. Donald Trump said the following: now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath for this country. I'm sure Merrick Garland will get right on that.
So Donald Trump is now threatening the American people and people who don't like him. At his rally today, he said that there's going to be, quote, a bloodbath if he loses in November. It's crazy. Take a look at the clip.
And you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine.
Yeah, a bloodbath, according to Donald Trump. Do you folks see what he's doing here? He's trying to scare people into supporting him or staying quiet and not making their voices heard. And to that, I say, screw you, Donald Trump. You don't get to try to scare the American people into submission so you can achieve your lifelong dream of becoming a dictator. Like, this is exactly what authoritarian leaders do. When you look at dictatorships around the world and in history, one of the ways they maintain power is by scaring the people, making sure that they don't speak up against them and their reign. That's what Donald Trump wants to achieve, and that's what he's saying here. We cannot allow this guy back into office in 2024. Our democracy quite literally depends on it.
Obviously, these are not serious people, man. But I think they deserve our help. I don't think we need to make fun of these people. I think we need to try a different approach. You know, some of them, yeah, they know that they're propagandists. They're just doing their part to spread propaganda. And some of them actually might be smart enough to know better. But I think a lot of them, man, are just victims. They're unwilling participants in perpetuating each scam after the other, man. And regardless of where they fall on the food chain of stupid, I mean, you can be sure that they all believe that Donald Trump incited the crowd with dog whistles when he said, go and be peacefully heard. They believe that he called all Mexicans sexual deviants when he said, I'm sure some of them are good people. And they truly believe that he praised white racists in Charlottesville when he literally said, and not white supremacists, they should be condemned for sure. And those are exact words. People don't realize that. But they'll believe anything. They also believe all the nonsense about him not remembering Melania Trump's name. They believe every single bit of the insanity that they're fed to believe. They're made to believe it. But the scary thing about these people is, you know, their liberalism spreads just as bad and just as fast as any other communicable disease. And this is why what we really, really need is a responsible media.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Now, Mono, it was unclear exactly what Donald Trump was referring to when he made those comments. However, the Trump campaign later tried to clarify those remarks, telling us that he was referring to the auto industry and he was warning of an economic bloodbath. But we did see the Biden campaign immediately jump on those remarks. We heard this from one of their spokespeople. They said, quote, he wants another January 6th, but the American people are going to give him another electoral defeat this November because they continue to reject his extremism, his affection for violence, and his thirst for revenge. Now, the Trump campaign argued that the Biden campaign statement was being a bit deceptive. And we heard this from Stephen Chung, one of his top advisors. They told us, quote, crooked Joe Biden and his campaign are engaging in deceptively out of context editing that puts Roman Polanski to shame. So clearly different takes on those remarks. But as you mentioned, a very dark speech from the former president here in Ohio.
He is endorsing political violence.
Says that he was talking about an economic bloodbath. Yeah. I don't know if I buy that.
What do you even say to that, man? You see that? This is what the left's version of journalistic integrity is. I mean, they will tell their mushy-brained victims, you know, we just don't know what he meant. But just remember, he is responsible for January 6th. So we just, you know, we're going to let you make up your own mind. But the guy's dangerous. Don't say we didn't warn you. That's essentially what they're doing. That's the leftist media's version of balanced reporting. But the problem is, and the reason they have less and less credibility by each passing day is that nowhere in any of their balanced reporting do they ever show the actual unfiltered clip. These are not serious people, but they are powerful. And this is what we're up against, man. This is what we're up against. Very, very powerful forces. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how long this one lasts. I don't think very long. I think people are too smart for this one. But even more interesting than that, it's going to be interesting to see what comes next, because we're going to see more of these scams. We're going to see more of these out of context, lazy propagandist distillations that just feed off people's confirmation bias and pollute their minds. But we got to find a way to fight back. That's our only hope, man. But that's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.